Well, now, if you have any questions that you have written out, if you'll raise your hand, someone will come and pick them up. One of the questions, and let's get this off the table right now. Dana, are you still on the boards of the charters in New Orleans?
No, ma'am. No, I'm not. I proudly served on First Line Schools board for I believe roughly 2 to 3 years. Had the pleasure of serving as president of the board, but I resigned my position when I went to work for the Recovery School District.
One other question for you. Don't sit down. What happens when schools fail in the RSD?
Well, it depends. If it's a charter school that doesn't meet the state minimum requirements, then we put them out of business, and we find better alternatives for our students. Now that looks a number of different ways. For example, in St. Landry Parish this past year, there was a school, Crestwell Elementary, that became Recovery School District eligible, and we worked with the local school district to actually close that school. There was a school that looked a lot like the young lady said. It was under-enrolled. It was not meeting the needs of elementary kids in Opelousas, and so we worked with the local parish to come up with a plan of action to put those kids in a B-rated school that was less than a mile from there. So there are a number of different strategies that we could use. We do believe in the strategy of using charter schools. So in New Orleans, when a charter school does not meet those requirements that the state has set forth, and we hold them accountable, we close that school. We find a better alternative for those students, whether it be placing them in other higher performing schools or finding new operators, charter school operators who want to take on that challenge.
Thank you. Now, we have a question for Carolyn Hill, and back to you, Dana. You'll get the second bite of the apple. Are the students in charter schools and in recovery districts, are they held to the same standards and their teachers held to the same standards as the public school system? Start with Carolyn as a representative of the Bessie Board, and if not, why not?
Well, first I'd like to piggyback on what Mr. Peterson stated in reference to if a school is failing in the recovery school district, what are the other alternatives? Now, I've been on the board for 2 years, and one of the things that I have experienced with schools failing in a recovery school district, what they would do is they would have a charter authorizer come in and charter the school. Now, once the school is chartered, if the school is failing for 2 to 3 years, Bessie will come in and say, we're going to take over this school, we're going to strip you of your charter and make it a RSD school, meaning a direct ran school. So whenever they close a charter or whenever they take a charter authorizer from the school district, they receive a new site code. So whenever you get a new site code, you start all over again. So you never make it to the 5-year mark to even get to the point where you're able to sit down with the local school district and say, hey, we're not succeeding. What can we do? Let's come up with a plan to return the school. So the game that they are playing, which is LDOE and Recovery School District, is that they allow these charters to come in. They're only going to allow them to operate for so many years. And then what they're going to do is they'll bring the charter back to Bessie, give them a new site code, and then start the process all over again. So for me, the disheartening part is that we are recycling our children. Are our children really succeeding? Because we are recycling them. So I wanted to piggyback on that point. Secondly, when you look at the charters, schools and you look at traditional public schools, even the voucher schools, and one of the issues that I have, and I tell people all the time, I'm not against charter, I'm not against traditional public schools, but what I'm against is the implementation. What I'm against is the policy and the process. It's not an equitable playing field. And so when you look at the charter schools, they are set at certain standards. The traditional public schools have certain standards, and the vouchers and the private and parochial schools have certain standards. So when you look at a charter school, they're not required to have certified teachers. It's not mandated for them to have certified teachers. But when we look at the traditional public school, it's required for them to have certified teachers. When you look at the private and parochial schools, it's required for them to have certified or highly qualified teachers. So when you look at the overall scope of the policies, the charter schools have more advantage than any other group. But then we'll stand and say, hey, these schools are succeeding. But are they really succeeding? But then we look at the traditional public schools and say they're failing. But we have put policies in place to allow them to fail. And if we give them the same opportunity, let everyone start, like the young lady said, let everyone start at the beginning and then run your course. And so that's one of the issues that Bessie has created, in my opinion and in my experiences.
Thank you. And there's one thing that didn't get answered, Carolyn.
Sorry.
You didn't answer the question of whether the students were tested equally in both school systems.
Well, yes, I can say that. The children are required to be tested equally in both schools. Now, last year, and the policy has changed, but prior to, students that were a part of the scholarship program, it wasn't mandated for them to take the LEAP or the iLEAP testing. It was not required for them to take it. However, this year, under the policy that has been created through Bessie, that they are required to take the iLEAP and LEAP test.
Thank you. Dana? Could you use that mic?
Yes. So, a lot was said. I certainly would take issue with the notion that our charter schools start at somehow the 20-yard line and traditional schools start in the back of the end zone. I don't think that's just an accurate reflection of what goes on. I would say, if you look at New Orleans, for example, every public school student, and first of all, charter schools are public schools. When parents and families send their kid to a school, they don't send it to a governing structure. They send their kids to a school, whether it be a charter school, a traditional school, an East Baton Rouge Parish School, a Recovery School District school. These charter schools are public schools, and they are answerable and held accountable to the public, just like traditional public schools are. Yes, there are different policies in place, because why would charter schools operate in the same fashion as traditional public schools? They could just continue to be the traditionally run school that wasn't meeting the needs of those students or that local community. The tests are the same. The kids are held accountable in the same way. Every public charter school kid in New Orleans, out of their MFP, comes a significant portion to the local legacy and debt of the local school system. And in Baton Rouge, it was actually a key element of the discussions that have been going on for nearly 2 years with the Recovery School District and the East Baton Rouge Parish School System about working to come up with what we think is that adequate number for public school kids who end up in a public charter school for out of their MFP to come back to the local school system, because we do believe in honoring that commitment to retirees of previous who've worked in the system previously. Currently, no, they don't. It does not happen, but it's certainly been a part of that dialogue for quite some time now. So I just, I would like us to focus on the outcomes that we want for kids that I think are common across whatever type of school system or whatever type of school it is. There's always, you have to have the whole story. You have to have the whole context. I don't want to belabor the point, but Carver High School in New Orleans, there was just a bid awarded to a contractor that's about to begin the design plans on that school. As you know, we are engaging in the largest school reconstruction project in the history of the city. It is a $1.8 billion FEMA settlement to rebuild the public education infrastructure in the city. You can't rebuild all those schools at the same time. There's not enough labor and contracting power to do so, and there are not enough places for kids to go to school in other places while their schools are being built. So yes, you could go to a number of schools in New Orleans right now where students are not in an adequate school facility, but their schools are being built. There are a number of kids who are also in brand new buildings, in completely renovated and refurbished buildings. It's a process that's going to take time. So that's, I think, an example of people taking a bit of information and taking it out of context to try to paint us as somehow a bunch of nefarious, a bunch of people with some nefarious intent. It takes time to rebuild school buildings. And that's what's happening in New Orleans. That's the full story. Now, it is absolutely inadequate that 8 years later, all of those schools aren't built. But as I said, it's a process. It's taking time. And those students are going to get a great, at the end of the day, a great new school facility. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'd just like to say that he is correct that the RSD has acknowledged that they are not paying legacy costs in any charter school operation outside of New Orleans, and that for the past 2 years, they have been saying that they're going to come up with a method for figuring out how to pay those additional costs. But while we wait 2 years, right, that is about $1 million that has not been available to public school students in East Baton Rouge Parish alone. And that's just with the Recovery School District charters. And so this is, right, this is $1 million is a lot of money. Think about the educational opportunities that the East Baton Rouge Parish school system has not been able to provide for its students, because for 2 years they have not been able to come up with a way to adequately compensate the East Baton Rouge Parish school system for these legacy costs. If we know it's a problem and they said they're going to come up with a solution, then let's come up with a solution before our kids are all graduated. And this is for me. Do you want me to read the question? What do you recommend we do to address the discrepancy costs of the Recovery School District? Well, the first thing I would say is to make them pay their legacy costs. That would be definitely a step in the right direction. Another issue with the minimum foundation program formula is right now, the way the charter schools that operate in the Recovery School District get their dollars is that they get the average of the MFP across a district, but they don't necessarily, what that means is that if a school district, say, gets $10,000 for a traditional student and they get more for students with disabilities and they get more money for gifted and talented students, that increases what the average MFP is for a district. And charter schools get the average that includes those gifted and talented students and includes those students with disabilities. But the charter school system inside Recovery School Districts in New Orleans, as well as Baton Rouge, don't have the same number of special education students as their traditional public school district, which means when they take the average, they have more money to educate a traditional student, and then the traditional public school district has less money to meet the needs of their special education students. They are making a move in the right direction with increasing their special education population, but the school district in New Orleans was sued over that issue. So we know it's a problem because charter schools can have selective admission requirements. So that's something that has to be addressed.
I would have come with the, I just like an opportunity to respond really quickly. Recovery School District charter schools in New Orleans have the highest percentage of special ed students in the entire parish. In fact, the local school system has a lower percentage of, on average, special ed students, because of course it is the majority of the schools, well, not the majority of them, but a lot of the schools within the parish school system or under the governing authority of the parish school system are some of them magnet and selective admission schools. There are in fact type 5 charter schools, which is the Recovery School District. Type 5 charter schools by definition are open enrollment, non-selective, open admission schools. Not one type 5 charter school had selective admissions practices. In the parish of Orleans, every school with a selective admission practice is an Orleans Parish School Board run school. So it's not an accurate reflection. Again, our charter schools are open enrollment, open admissions, take every child, public schools.
Can I just, one more comment on this, right? But part of this is a statistical argument on whether or not you're looking at an average across the district or an average across individual schools, all right? So in the East Baton Rouge Parish School System, our average special education enrollment is about 12%, but that's going to vary across individual schools, right? So, I mean, this is from the Recovery School District's own websites for Dalton Elementary and Lanier Elementary, and Dalton Elementary has 4% of its student body as special education compared to 5% at Lanier, right? And that is well below the district average for East Baton Rouge Parish, right? And so I'm not arguing that that is even done on purpose. But what I'm arguing is that using the average MFP is not the correct way to allocate funds to the Recovery School District. It should be allocated based on the student that they are receiving. And so that would be my argument, that if it's not an issue and that if everything is even keeled, then why are we doing this averaging rather than allocating it based on the student and the student's needs? That would be my question.
All right, there's been a slight change in the lineup. Craig Freeman, school board member, had to report back to LSU so he could teach a class, and we have Tarvel Smith taking his place, a school board member. So you get the heavy question. Will the school board examine the issue of not requiring charter schools to have certified or highly qualified teachers? Is this considered when granting a charter? Okay, I'm sorry. You didn't hear the second part, or you didn't hear either one of them? Most of it. Will the school board examine, this is East Baton Rouge Parish School Board, examine the issue of not requiring charter schools to have certified or highly qualified teachers? Is this considered when granting a charter? Everybody got it now?
Good afternoon, and I just came to eat and hear the dialogue. I didn't know I was going to be recruited, but I don't mind being on this. Okay, yeah. Take it off here. Hello, can you, hello? Okay, all right.
More comfortable with this.
This,
Turn it on.
hello? Okay, this works better. As far as the charters that are issued by East Baton Rouge Parish, we look to see if they're going to have certified or highly qualified teachers. So it is an issue, at least for me. I know it's not required, but to answer the question, yes, we will look at it, and hopefully charters that we will approve in the future will have that requirement. Now, as far as charters that are issued outside of East Baton Rouge Parish, if they come to the school board and we deny the charter, they can go right to Bessie. And Bessie doesn't have that requirement. So if you know you don't want to have highly qualified teachers, or if you're just hiring people who are between careers or whatnot that are in the charter schools, go ahead and get denied by the local school district and go to Bessie, who doesn't have that requirement. But as far as East Baton Rouge Parish, we are looking into that, and hopefully that will be one of the requirements, that they have certified personnel, certified teachers, and highly qualified teachers.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, one of the next questions is, how is the RSD justified in running high schools that once held over 1,000 children, and now those same schools have less than 200? For example, Estruma High School and Capitol High School in Baton Rouge.
Put them all in one. You would do that.
Thank you. Thank you for that bit of advice.
Thank you.
Well, that's solution sets. I think that's certainly what I'd like to hear. When the Recovery School District took over Estruma, my friend here led an active campaign himself to discourage parents and students from enrolling in Estruma. In fact, if you go to Estruma High School right now and talk to some of the students who were recipients of that message, don't go to Estruma High School. So it's probably a more relevant question, I think, for Mr. Smith. I can tell you what our plan is moving forward. As I said, our strategy, and we feel like we're sticking to it, is to recruit what we think is a high-quality charter school operator and to provide school programming at the sites that would hopefully encourage many more students and families to take advantage of that opportunity, and that's our plan. That's been our plan all along. We just finished several meetings this week with community stakeholders, hearing from potential charter school operators who again want that that privilege of being able to educate kids at either of those high schools. What I would say, if I could piggyback on the other question previously that Mr. Smith answered, there are approximately, I believe, about 48 or so schools, mostly in North Baton Rouge, that have a D or an F rating. Now, only 8 of those schools are in the Recovery School District, to the point of whether there should be, what type of certifications teachers should have. Now, schools in that district, in that area, in that region are facing a myriad of problems in terms of what kids come with. And I think what's important is for us to focus on that there are a number of certified and highly qualified teachers who are in schools that still aren't getting the level of outcomes that we want for kids. I'm not pointing fingers at teachers, but what I am saying is let's not get bogged down on what can't be done or what the differences are, but we need to actually be working collaboratively together to figure out solutions for kids who are in those schools, so that they can have that great opportunity that we all want for all of our kids. It's not just about teacher certifications. That's not the whole story.
They got me up here, so I'm going to respond. And like my good friend, Mr. Peterson, said, the school board has been accused of micromanaging. I'm a politician, and I'm going to make a confession. I did lead actively a campaign to have kids possibly not go to Estruma High School. So, Charles, you can put that in the paper. The reason being, Estruma High School is in my elected representative district. Over the past, I think you all took it over 2 years ago, but prior to the RSD getting involved in Estruma High School, I was a volunteer track coach over there. I volunteered and substituted sitting in classes. But let me get to the gist.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So I had a deep concern. There are still kids to this day that have graduated from Estruma High School that I stay in contact with. When I'm out in the community, I see, hey, Mr. Smith, how you doing? First thing I ask them, what are you doing with your life? Some of them have some issues. Others are doing well. One girl that I coached in track is getting ready to go to medical school. That makes me proud. So yes, I did actively have a campaign. The reason being, when I saw highly qualified teachers who gave a you-know-what about a kid, saying that they're going to stick with the East Baton Rouge Parish school system, and we had space for them in our schools to remain employed. And I didn't know what was going to come to Estruma High School. That is why I did that, because I cared about those kids. And I said, if teachers are going to Bel Air, if teachers are going to Broadmoor, that I know educated kids that I stay in contact with to this very day, and you have a choice, the state and the education reform movement likes to use the word choice. That's the buzzword, choice. So regardless if Tarvel Smith went to a parent's house, went to a church, that parent had a choice. And for whatever reason, they choose the East Baton Rouge Parish School System. And by the way, that was my question that I wrote. I didn't know I was going to be up here. So I'll read the, you knew that was my question too. Are Teach for America teachers regarded as highly qualified teachers?
By the school board.
By the school board. No, they're not. And I've been one of the biggest critics of Teach for America for several reasons. I think some teachers that get involved in the program do it for the right reasons. They're looking for ways to foster a teaching career. But the truth of the matter is, you have some teachers, and well, the former superintendent said it jokingly, and I think he's right to some degree. You have teach for a while. If I'm an accountant major and I graduated in accounting, and the economy isn't looking too good right now, and I can get a job teaching in a public school, it's going to look good on my resume when the economy rebounds, and I'll go forth in what my discipline is. But they're not regarded as highly qualified teachers, but they can become highly qualified teachers if they go through the proper requirements to become highly qualified. And I would hope that Teach for America would do that, the people who are coming in. And I'm sure there are some who have gotten involved in the schools and say, okay, this is what I want to do for a career. And if that's the case, do what the state requires and become highly qualified and become that super teacher we know they can become.
Thank you. Carolyn, it's your turn. Come on up. I got several questions that have been directed towards you. Okay?
Okay.
Carolyn, what is your position on the RSD?
Yes, indeed.
She loves us. She loves us.
But this is my position on RSD, and I'm one of the few Bessie members that challenge them. Because when you think of the Recovery School District, when you look at the word it means to do over. And most of these kids that are currently in the Recovery School District are kids that need additional resources and additional help. When you look at the Recovery School District, in my personal opinion, are they doing that to supply those needs for those children? No. I had the opportunity 2 weeks ago to visit Walter Coyne High School in New Orleans. When I left that high school, I got on the phone and I called my godmother. I was literally in tears. And the reason why I was in tears is because I have never seen anything out of my 31 years, students in a school literally begging me for help. And it was so disheartening to see the conditions those students were in. Now, if you ask Mr. Peterson, he'll tell you they're doing great. But what you see on paper is not what you always see when you go visit these schools. And these kids are in a system where they were already considered failing, but you put them in a classroom where all of their core courses are on a computer with no instructor. But you have one teacher in a classroom where she's responsible for all the core areas. And the students there was just literally begging me, Ms. Hill, we want a teacher. We need a teacher in the classroom. Now, you ask me, those students are being set up to fail. They're not going to do well. These kids told me this. Ms. Hill, we feel that we're going to fail. We don't want to be here. And so within me and all my power, I told them I was going to do any and everything to help them. Now, when you look at the Recovery School District as a whole, my opinion, it's a money-making business. Because the purpose of the Recovery School District was the intent of the law was not for it to be permanent. The intent of the law is for it to be temporary. However, you have Bessie have decided, well, hey, this is a way that we can make some money and penetrate the system and bring in some charter schools, and this is how we can do it. Let's come in and take over these schools, and once we take them over, you're never going to get them back. But then we'll criticize EBR because they come up with a brilliant plan and beat you at your own game to make sure that our children have exactly what they need to succeed to stay in their local district. So my response, I challenged them. Dana know I challenge them all the time. Patrick Dobar knows I'm not making. I will challenge them because it's not about me, it's about those children. And so that's my response.
Answer the second question.